Hey there, welcome to Talking Texas Politics with Calvin. I am joined here with Steve Gaylord in Valley View, Texas. Steve was our longtime precinct chair in the Valley View area. And why don't you just introduce yourself, Steve?
Sure. Um, I well, I've been here since 2000. My wife and I decided we wanted to have a country lifestyle. We bought, fortunate enough to buy 43 acres here, um, and so we've had horses and cattle, and we also have golden retrievers, and which we raise puppies and have a little business with that, and then we also enjoy cats quite a bit. So you may not see them here because they're kind of shy, but we have a fair number of cats around here. And I actually been known for feeding feral cats in town for the last 20 years or so. Um, but the so I went to school in Tulsa. Have a bachelor's in math from the University of Tulsa in '78, engineering master's degree or master's in engineering degree from Tulsa in 1982. Went to work for IBM in 1979 and spent about 35 years there, a little more, um, doing technical sales, project management, that type of thing. Mostly, I spent a few years in Tulsa, and then I transferred to I actually was interested in going to Stanford, so I got a transfer out to Palo Alto for a couple of years on a temporary assignment. But I ended up falling in love, married my wife, and didn't ever worry about Stanford too much. Then moved back, and I decided we'd rather be in Texas. So we moved back here to Texas in 1986. So wasn't born here, but I got here as soon as I could, and I guess we've been here almost 40 years now, and 25 in Valley View. And then after my 35-year career at IBM, I went to law, decided to go to law school. I'd always been wanting to. Actually, if you go back and Google, it may still be out there. There was a couple programs IBM had about trying to save money for future education, and I guess they thought I'd be a good poster boy for that. So they actually had me do articles with U.S. News and World Report, and actually the New York Times came out here and did shot some pictures of me working with a horse because I was going to saving money through the IBM Education Savings Plan, and I did talk at the time. Once I retired, I was probably going to go to law school, and I think that was back in 2009. So when I retired, I did apply to law school. I was able to get into UNT in Dallas, which was a fairly new law school. It was pretty woke, a little more woke than I really like to be around. Um, there's a lot of good people there, but I was able to transfer to Texas A&M. I was almost an A student at UNT, so A&M said, "Come on over." And so I continued the rest of my law degree at A&M. I have a JD. I graduated in 2020 with honors from A&M, and then I wasn't done yet, and so I continued with the Master's of Law program, which is another 24 hours. Actually graduated that degree with a 4.0, and that. So I'm kind of a part-time country lawyer. I didn't necessarily go to law school to open an office and sue, make millions of dollars, but I do practice and do some consumer law and do a fair amount of estate planning and probate type of stuff. And occasionally, people call me about water, or somebody called me about, uh, oh, they want to, get out of some solar deal scam that they got into. And I would advise anybody having worked a couple of solar deals, stay out of them. So, and then 2004, some friends of mine were interested in what was going on at NCTC because they had decided to build a $6 million performing arts center that they didn't even have a program to support. And they started having meetings, and I went. And when they needed people to run, I said, if nobody else will, I will. And I ended up running for the board in 2004. We unseated 3 incumbents that were big tax suspenders. And when I got on the board at NCTC, the first meeting, I remember they came in and they had some money they wanted to spend. I think it was $57,000 on furniture. And they came in and they had bids on these chairs that they were going to put in the classroom, standard office chairs between $80 and $200. And the one I had here at my house I probably paid $50 for. And I'm like, why would we buy the $200 chair when we got a bid for $80 chair? And they said, because the $200 chair is better. I said, why is it better? Well, because it costs more. And I'm like, that's your only reason? I said, can I sit in the chairs to see why the $200 chair is better? Of course, they didn't have the chair there. So I oppose that, but we talked about it long enough, and the college president said, well, it's not coming out of taxpayer money anymore. You ought to approve this. So They approved it. I voted against it. Next month, the college president comes in with the budget, and he's got 70,000 or 50. He had a $70,000 tax increase with 50,000 for the chairs for the next year. And I'm like, you just told me last month that $50,000 wasn't coming from the taxpayer money. What's it doing in this budget? He got real sheepish and said, okay, we'll scratch that out. So I voted against it, but the tax increase that he wanted for 70,000, which was about a 4.2% tax increase, if my memory's right, went down to 20,000. It was 1.2%. And I voted against it. And that was the last tax increase they passed in the 6 years I was on the board. And they were trying to push a bond that I opposed after that they didn't need, because a lot of it was for admin buildings so they could have big, nice, fancy offices. And so we defeated 2 bonds on that when they narrowed it down to just stuff for the students like nursing and career technology. I was less opposed to that. In fact, I've supported it until I found out they had 25 million in the bank, and I'm like, why do you need a $15 million bond when you got 25 million fund balance? But other than that, I did support that because I thought it was for the right stuff.
And so we're here today talking about bonds.
Right.
So we are in the Valley View Independent School District. They have proposed a $65 million bond.
Right.
That's going to be voted on here on November 4th. And you have opposed that. You have very adamantly opposed that. So tell us a little bit about your opposition and why you don't think that's necessary at this time.
Well, I started asking questions about it, and I started doing some analysis because I'm God bless me, with some pretty good abilities in math. And, pretty good, to go to law school at my age and earn 2 degrees, you got to be pretty good at analyzing things and making arguments, for or against. So I started analyzing it and asking questions. And one of the first questions I asked is, we're already taxing it well, now they're at 21.65 cents, I think it is, for the INS rate for an $800,000 bond payment each year, because there's existing bonds totaling 9.8 million. And so I went to the bond planning meeting and I said, how can you borrow $65 million? You're already getting, 21 cents. You can only go up to a state maximum of 50 cents. If you can only have a bond your current bond debt is $9.8 million, and you're using 21 cents to pay that, how can you get a $65 million bond? And they said, you're right, the maximum is 65 cents. So I said,
50 cents.
50 cents, you're right. Thank you for correcting me. Yep. So the maximum INS rate is 50 cents, and that's state law. And it hasn't changed in 25 years that I've been following this. And I don't think it will with the legislature to keep trying to push down school property tax rates. So they agreed, and they came back and said, well, and they had a chart. They said, well, we're going to borrow $30 million in 2026. We're going to borrow another $15 million in 2028, and we're going to borrow another $20 million in 2030. And that assumes tax value increases of 10 to 15% a year. It's 10 some years, 15 others. Cumulative, it's 68%. So they need a 68% increase in the taxable value in Valley View ISD before they can even sell these bonds. So I'm like, why should we give you, one vote? Why are we not voting 3 times? One for the 2026, one for the 2028 and 2030. Well, they want us to trust them. And then I started looking at what's the academic performance of the school district. And I said, wait a minute here. So the high school has been rated a C for the last 3 years. There was a couple of years they didn't rate it because of COVID. The middle school is rated a D in 2025, but it's been an F the 2 years prior. And then the elementary school is rated a D, and then I believe it was an F last year or the year before that. And I'm like, and they're talking about all this growth, and I'm sitting here saying, you want to have the highest possible tax rate for INS, and you got some of the worst academic performance. Why are people going to move here to do that? And by the way, we now have the school vouchers thing that the legislature passed. And I don't know that many people that know about this, but the big, beautiful bill has a $1,700 tax credit that I can give to any scholarship granting organization in the state of Texas. And I get a dollar for dollar write-off. It's not a deduction. It's a credit on my tax return. So either I'm going to find one or I will set one up, being an attorney, so that we can have people here in Cook County donate their money, because it doesn't cost them anything other than they have to wait a couple months before they get their tax refund, to that scholarship granting authority, so we can send the kids to good performing Christian schools. And so I thought about all that, and I says, this growth they're talking about, I'm not sure that I believe all that's going to happen. And if it does, why wouldn't people put their kids in better performing schools and C, D, and F rated schools? So I was kind of like, between that and I started looking at, they're kind of lowballing the numbers. I kind of said,
Not lowballing the number.
yeah. In other words, the school board president, Eric Van, when I started putting out some numbers, as I said, okay, 65 million plus, I put it in a loan amortization thing, just like you would do on a mortgage. I said, how much is it going to take, with interest, to pay a $65 million bond over 30 years? Well, it's $111 million with interest.
Almost double.
Yeah. And then but because they're going to have to stagger those and can't sell them all at once, that's going to take 4 years to sell them, and they're all 30-year bonds, and it's going to take 34 years to pay them off. Yeah. So that's actually over $120 million. So one of the first things I did is said, okay, so how many homes do we have in Cook County? Or I'm sorry, in Valley View ISD? It's about 1,400 homes. So I said, well, if you divide 120 million by 1,400 homes, you're going to be about $78,000. That's the share that each of us are going to have to pay on that bond. And they're talking about growth and other things, but honestly, 400 plus of those aren't going to pay on it because they have a home, they have an over 65 or disability exemption. So if you really did that, took those numbers out, you might be over 100,000 per home. Now, there's going to be some growth, and they've got their arguments. So I assume, but they also said they're going to keep the maximum INS tax rate at 50 cents. So I thought, we need to multiply these numbers out. They also did a little goofy thing here this year. Last year, they were able to get 6.5 cents in emergency rate because of the tornado south of us down here in FRF and Shenandoah. And they could do it without voter approval, but they can only do it 1 year. So they raised the tax rate in 2024, 6.5 cents. In 2025, they said, oh, we don't want to make it look like this bond's going to cost too much. So since we can't keep that 6.5 cents in M&O, we're going to move it to INS. Even though they only needed 14 some cents to pay the bond debt, they set the tax rate at 21 cents. 21.65, because then they can say, we're only raising your rate 28.35 cents, not 35 cents. So they're making it look 25% smaller than it is. So I went and put those numbers in a spreadsheet and said, okay, I'm going to assume 3% growth in your property value a year, which I think is pretty low considering they've gone up double or triple in the last 12 years, 10, 12 years?
Yeah, probably at least.
And that, I've got rental property I sold for double what I paid for it, and I bought it in 2013. So I assumed just 3%, trying to be conservative. I assume that the interest rate, since they're tax-free bonds, you don't have to pay interest or income tax on them, that it'd be a little bit under the 10-year T-bill, which is at about 4-something%, and between 4.5%. So I assume 4. They haven't challenged any of those numbers. And I said, so 4% interest, 3% growth in your property value each year, maximum tax rate, is going to, by over 34 years, that's going to be $65,000 that you're going to pay if you can stay here and that. And I'm like, do people realize that it's going to be $65,000?
So what does that come to a year? Is that about $1,000, $1,500 a year?
Well, it's about $800 this year, but because you're going up 3% a year, it's over $3,000 by the time the bond's paid off.
Oh, wow.
So at that $800, your mortgage payment, if you take out a 30-year mortgage this year and your mortgage payment's $800, it doesn't go up unless you have a variable rate mortgage. But you have a fixed rate mortgage, your mortgage is going to stay the same for 30 years, your mortgage payment. Your taxes and insurance are going to go up, but your mortgage doesn't. But in this case, because it goes up based on the value of the house each year, and the taxable value of the house goes up 3%, that $800 turns into more than $3,000 after 34 years. Hmm. And, there's a lot of people, I've got rental property where my insurance and taxes are more than my mortgage payment is.
Right. You don't get the homestead exemption.
You don't get the homestead on those, so all those are going to go up. And, they sent that mailer out to everybody over 65 saying, oh, you're zero tax impact if you're over 65 on your homestead. Well, that's partly true, but it's also false, because that mailer, they use taxpayer money to send it out. I have the emails to prove that, and I also got one with their Pitney Bowes stamp on it. Um, they don't tell you in there anywhere that it's you're not going to be saved from a property tax increase. I've got 43 acres. I've got barns. They're going up. If I've got rental properties, they're going to see the full hit on that thing. I don't have any here in Valley View, thankfully, on that one. If you have business property in here, you know, you own a store or you got a restaurant, you're going to get the hit. Even if you're 65 or older, you're still going to get the hit. You got oil and gas. I've got friends that, you know, inherited from their parents. They got 12 little oil and gas properties. They're going to get a big tax increase on every one of those, and they're over 65. So there's been a lot of misinformation put out. The other thing that's really hit me is that they have tried to make it look like there's a problem where some of their reports say there isn't. They have a report on their website from Zonda that says they have a school building capacity. I forget the total. The total numbers I believe are 525 for the high school, and overall for the district are 1315. They
and that's on existing property.
That's existing property, and that is a 2023 report, which they've since tried to discredit. And they said, well, our capacity is really 980. And I said, well, show me how you got to that.
So they're discrediting their own report.
Yes. Yeah.
They're trying to
discredit their own report.
Because it doesn't fit the narrative.
It doesn't fit their narrative that they want. And they used to pay they switched the demographic study company that they used. And so that may have changed the projection on growth. But these are still physical buildings. They don't get smaller. No tornado went through them, right? So if that building had room for, if they had 30 classrooms and those classrooms can hold 200 or 22 students each, that building's capacity is 660 2 years ago. It was 660 4 years ago. It's going to be 660 2 years from now, and it's still going to be 660 10 years from now.
Right.
So to say that they have the wrong guy doing the analysis, and these are the numbers now. And by the way, when I've asked for how they came up with those, they won't tell me. When I've asked for the reports they use to manage, because the principals and superintendents, they got to know what teachers in what classroom, how many students are in there. Is it getting full? Where, if I get another third grader come in, which room am I going to put them in? And that they won't give me that. That's public information. I've been waiting more than a month. Now they've lawyered up on me. So
unfortunately, that's a typical tactic.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're trying to drag it out. So they're hiding things. They're misinforming the public to try and make it sound like it's a lot less than it's going to cost. They personally attacked me. They won't tell me what's wrong with my calculations. In general, they will tell me some general things. Mr. Van put out a post, which he's the school board president, right? And we used to be friends on Facebook. When I started criticizing the school district and the numbers they were putting out, he unfriended me on Facebook. And now he's making these posts to his friends on Facebook saying, Mr. Gaylord's wrong, and this is why. Well, fortunately, we have some mutual friends. And they send me his posts. So I took his post and I did the analysis on it. And I just went back and I had to type it in. I couldn't get it to scan right, but I typed in what he had and then I put my response in red under it. Well, he was wrong in everything he said, and he's saying my math is wrong. I was multiplying the wrong columns or something. Well, I showed him my math. I did those fourth grade math. I was taught when you do math and multiplication, then you divide back the total out of the numbers you used and see if you get the right numbers back. My numbers work. He won't show his math. But he was wrong on everything he said. The only thing I agreed with him that he said I was wrong about, he said that I didn't factor in that they were selling the bonds over 4 years. My analysis factors that in, but it doesn't matter because if your tax rate stays at 50 cents, it doesn't, and they sell the bonds, it doesn't matter what year they sell them. If they're charging you 50 cents tax rate times your property value to pay those bonds, it doesn't matter what year they sell them. They've already at the maximum rate. He's also come out and said, with growth, we won't have to raise the tax rate anymore. Well, state law says you can't raise the tax rate anymore. So that's pretty disingenuous.
Yeah. So if folks want to find out more about you and what you're doing, you have a sign here.
Right.
How can people find out more about what you've done and what you're
Sure. Well, we've got a little page on Facebook. We've only been going a couple of weeks. This is kind of a low budget deal, but I did kick in $500 for some signs. And the Facebook page is Valley View Bond. And then there's also a Valley View that's called the Valley View Voice, and they've agreed to let us put there. The Valley View Community Forum has said no more bond discussions because everybody's getting mad at each other, and the lady running it didn't want all these people calling her, why are you letting them put this up there? Why are you putting that there? So they stopped it, but I think they stopped it for both sides. So I'm okay with that. And then I have my personal Facebook page. I think I'm Steve.Gaylord.73 or something. If you go there, you'll see me standing next to a horse, and we raise golden retrievers, so you'll probably see a couple posts about that and whatever. And if you like some cute puppies, we got. And we don't talk about the bond on my puppy page, but it's North Texas AKC Golden Retrievers, and we're expecting 2 litters in about 30 days. So we'll have a lot of fun with them. Hopefully, right after the bond election, not before. But that's how you find out about it. And my phone number and my email address and everything is out there. So I mean, you have no trouble reaching out to me. The only thing I'll tell you is my phone is set to not ring through for telemarketers. So if you want to reach out to me, either text me or call me first. Leave a message. I'll call you back.
Well, very good. And so the election is November 4th. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the election is November 4th. It's part of the state constitutional election. So that means they can't do some of the things they might normally like to do, like have early voting at football games. They have to do early voting at the Cook County Courthouse Annex in Gainesville. And then the election on the election day is going to be here in Valley View. I think there may be one other place. I don't recall which one it is, but the voting here, there's probably one in Mountain Springs. And then the main polling place here is going to be at the First Baptist Church on North Lee. I believe it's in what's called the Rock or the Reach Out Center, kind of like a little small gym that they have across the street from the sanctuary. And it's the regular place that we vote most elections here in Valley View.
Well, Steve, we could go on about
Oh,
this all
sure.
day. This is just there's so much information out there, but I appreciate your courage in standing up to this. I know
Sure.
that you can take a lot of heat from the
Oh,
folks, and
yes.
there's always a lot of bitterness going back and forth. So I appreciate you
Oh,
doing
yeah.
that.
I'll tell you a short story on that.
Okay.
My wife used to work for the school district.
Mm.
Worked there 24 years. Some people criticize that we're not involved. We only had one son, and he graduated 18 years ago, but she stayed there for 24 years. She mostly worked with the learning disadvantaged kids. When I fought the bond election in 2013, she got a lot of heat. They were mean to her and all sorts of stuff. You know what? After the bond election passed, there were several people after they got their tax statements came up there and says, "We're sorry. We wish we'd listened to your husband. We didn't realize how much we were going to pay in increased taxes." So, so it's amazing to me how people in this is a small community. There's people like you say that be pretty mean, they'll bully you and stuff like that on Facebook. I mean, I saw the other guy. Somebody said the other day, you've made the worst mistake saying that about me. It's the worst mistake you ever made in your life. I mean, he was just short of a criminal threat, if you will, and when I read it. But there's that kind of stuff out there that I hope goes away.
Yeah.
Because we all got to live together, even if we don't agree.
Yep. Well, thank you very much for what you're doing and what you've done, and we'll see how this all turns out. But we appreciate you being involved.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks to everybody for listening to us today. Thank you for listening to Talking Texas Politics with Calvin, and God bless you, and God bless Texas.
Amen.